Rome has become the stage for one of Italy's most forceful diplomatic interventions in recent years. Speaking before Parliament, Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani addressed the escalating crisis in Gaza and the West Bank, delivering words that will reverberate far beyond Italy's borders. His remarks combined condemnation, reassurance, and a careful balancing act between defending Italian citizens abroad and navigating the complexities of Middle Eastern diplomacy. Tajani began with a blunt assessment of the situation unfolding in Gaza. In his words, "I want to be clear. What is happening in the Gaza Strip is increasingly unacceptable. We are firmly opposed to the Israeli plan to occupy Gaza City and to any hypothesis of forcibly transferring Palestinians from the Strip. Likewise, we condemn any intention to expand Israeli settlements in the West Bank or to annex it. Hamas bears enormous responsibility for having triggered this terrible spiral of violence with a senseless act of terrorism." This statement was remarkable for its clarity. At a time when many European leaders hesitate to confront Israel directly, Tajani drew a line. He framed Italy as an opponent of occupation and annexation, while still holding Hamas accountable for the violence that ignited the latest conflict. It was a speech crafted not only for Parliament, but for international audiences, projecting Rome's stance into the broader debate over Gaza's future. The crisis in Gaza has once again become a fault line of global politics. Israeli officials defend their proposed occupation of Gaza City as a necessary measure to dismantle Hamas infrastructure and guarantee national security. Yet critics argue that such a move risks igniting an even larger spiral of violence, displacing thousands and permanently undermining the fragile possibility of peace. For Palestinians, the prospect of forced transfer from the Strip carries echoes of historical trauma. For the international community, it represents a direct challenge to international law and humanitarian norms. By voicing Italy's opposition, Tajani aligned his country with the growing chorus in Europe calling for restraint. France, Germany, Spain, and other EU members have issued similar warnings, but Tajani's words stood out for their forceful delivery inside Italy's parliament. It was not a careful, bureaucratic statement. It was a condemnation delivered in the heart of government, broadcast for Italians and the world to hear. The minister then turned to another sensitive subject, the Global Sumud Flotilla. This initiative, a multinational convoy of ships attempting to break Israel's naval blockade of Gaza, includes 58 Italian citizens on board. Among them are activists, human rights representatives, and even some parliamentarians. The flotilla, named Sumud, the Arabic word for steadfastness, represents a symbolic challenge to Israel's authority over Gaza's borders and seas. Tajani reassured Parliament that Italy would stand by its nationals. He said, "We are also closely following the Global Sumud Flotilla case. We will guarantee diplomatic and consular assistance to the 58 Italian citizens participating in the initiative, as we wanted to do with the President of the Council, as we have always done for Italian citizens arrested in Israel in similar initiatives. I have asked the ministry's crisis unit to remain in close contact with the Italian spokesperson for the flotilla. Our embassy in Tel Aviv has been mobilized, and on my instructions, I have raised awareness among the Israeli authorities about respecting the rights of all nationals present on the flotilla, including some parliamentarians." His words underscored a careful balancing act. Italy does not openly endorse the flotilla's defiance of the blockade, yet it must guarantee the safety of its citizens abroad. The government knows that a confrontation at sea could result in arrests, injuries, or even worse. By instructing his crisis unit and embassy to stay in close contact, Tajani signalled readiness to intervene diplomatically at a moment's notice. The presence of Italian parliamentarians among the flotilla passengers raises the stakes further. Any incident involving elected officials could trigger a diplomatic rift between Rome and Tel Aviv. By mobilising early, Tajani aimed to prevent such an escalation while also sending a message. Italy will not abandon its citizens regardless of the political controversy surrounding their actions. This is not the first time Italy, or Europe more broadly, has had to navigate such tensions. In 2010, a flotilla attempting to break the Gaza blockade ended in bloodshed when Israeli forces stormed the ships, resulting in international outrage and a crisis in Israeli-Turkish relations. That incident highlighted the dangers of direct confrontation at sea and the political fallout that follows. Tajani, aware of this history, appears determined to prevent a repeat scenario involving Italian nationals. The larger context is one of growing division between Israel and its European partners. While the United States remains Israel's closest ally, Europe has often voiced concerns about settlement expansion and annexation. Tajani's remarks reflect this tradition, but they also mark a sharpening of tone. His speech places Italy squarely among those calling not only for restraint, but for a halt to occupation plans entirely. For Palestinians, Tajani's words may be interpreted as rare solidarity from a Western government. For Israelis, however, they may be seen as unfair criticism during a time of national crisis. Balancing these perspectives is the essence of European diplomacy in the Middle East, attempting to uphold principles of international law without severing relations with a vital regional partner. The implications stretch beyond Israel and Palestine. For Europe, every escalation in Gaza has a ripple effect. It heightens the risk of refugee flows, stirs political polarization within European societies, and fuels the narratives of extremist groups. Italy, geographically close to the Mediterranean migration routes, is acutely aware of how conflict in the Middle East translates into domestic challenges at home. Tajani's speech, therefore, was not only about foreign policy, it was about national stability. By condemning Israeli occupation plans while stressing Hamas's role in provoking violence, Tajani aimed to present Italy as a responsible actor, principled yet pragmatic, critical yet realistic. His intervention also strengthens Italy's standing within the European Union. At a time when Brussels debates its collective response, Rome has staked out a position that others may rally around. The diplomatic focus on the flotilla highlights another truth. The Gaza blockade remains one of the most contested issues in international politics. Israel views it as an essential tool to contain Hamas and prevent arms smuggling. Humanitarian groups, however, describe it as collective punishment, strangling Gaza's economy and denying basic human dignity. By referencing the flotilla, Tajani reminded Parliament that this blockade is not an abstract concept. It is a lived reality that citizens, including Italians, are directly confronting. What emerges from Tajani's speech is a portrait of a country trying to navigate stormy waters, literally and figuratively. On one hand, Italy seeks to maintain constructive relations with Israel, a regional power and economic partner. On the other, it cannot ignore the humanitarian and legal concerns raised by occupation and annexation. And in the middle of this tightrope walk stand 58 Italians aboard ships heading toward Gaza, relying on their government's protection. In closing his remarks, Tajani reaffirmed Italy's role as both a defender of international law and a guardian of its people. The message was clear. Italy will not stay silent in the face of occupation, and it will not abandon its citizens caught in the cross-currents of history. This moment marks a test of Italian diplomacy, whether it can translate strong words into meaningful influence, whether it can protect its nationals without provoking confrontation, and whether it can help steer Europe toward a unified stance on a conflict that continues to divide the world.
Voglio essere chiaro, quello che accade nella striscia è sempre più inaccettabile. Lo abbiamo ribadito in tutte le sedi e lo voglio ribadire anche qui in quest'Aula. Siamo fermamente contrari al piano israeliano di occupazione della città di Gaza e a ogni ipotesi di trasferimento forzato dei palestinesi dalla striscia. Così come condanniamo qualsiasi proposito di espansione degli insediamenti israeliani in Cisgiordania o di sua annessione. Hamas ha enormi responsabilità per aver scatenato questa terribile spirale di violenza con un insensato atto terroristico. Seguiamo da vicino anche la vicenda della Global Sumud Flotilla. Ai 58 cittadini italiani che partecipano all'iniziativa garantiremo, come abbiamo voluto assicurare insieme al Presidente del Consiglio, assistenza diplomatica e consolare, come abbiamo sempre fatto per i cittadini italiani fermati in Israele per iniziative analoghe. Ho chiesto all'unità di crisi del Ministero di restare in stretto contatto con la portavoce italiana della flottiglia. La nostra ambasciata a Tel Aviv è stata attivata e, su mia istruzione, ha sensibilizzato le autorità israeliane sul rispetto dei diritti di tutti i connazionali presenti sulla flottiglia, fra cui anche alcuni parlamentari.